Hey y'all, this is Brown at I've Brown, and tonight we're going to be talking about the character Stingray in the story Family Matters. So right here you have a nice opening splash page with the character Stingray in question and his lovely wife Diane, and surrounding them are a bunch of manta rays. Some really good artwork by Fern. So this story was taking place in issues 53 through 56 of Marvel Comics Presents. And Marvel Comics Presents was an anthology comic that Marvel had, which ran from the late 80s into the mid 90s. And one of the things that I really liked about this particular comic book, or at least of the issues I have of this comic book series, is that it oftentimes gave lesser known characters a chance to shine. And Stingray is one such character who's oftentimes considered something of a C-lister. And usually when I think of the character Stingray, I think of, say, someone who oftentimes is in the background of group scenes, such as, say, something going on with the Avengers. But his best known appearance for the longest amount of time was arguably in a single issue of Iron Man, which was a part of the Armor Wars storyline. And if you're an Iron Man fan, definitely check out the Armor Wars story, which is available in trade paperback. It's probably one of the best stories to come out of the Iron Man series. But Stingray's part in it was brief but important in a sense that his encounter with Iron Man had some negative consequences for Iron Man and Tony Stark, which I know are one and the same, but you read the story, you'll understand what I'm talking about. But that was, for the longest amount of time, the best known appearance of Stingray, and that was in another character's book. It was only for one issue. So it was nice to see that this particular character got a chance to get the spotlight on him within the pages of Marvel Comics Presents, and that was a good way to go about it. And so while I'm not going to say that the story's straight up good, I mean, it's definitely a decent story. So what ends up the way the story opens up is Stingray, whose real name is Walter Newell, and his wife Diane, who is an aquatic athlete or expert level scuba diver, according to the story anyway. The two of them, they live off this island where they have this research facility, because while Walter is technically considered a superhero, at least in the guise of Stingray, I mean, he's not a superhero full time. He's an oceanographer, and that's his passion. That's what he's known for. And so, being a superhero, it comes second to him as opposed to first. And the two of them, have a nice little setup. They have a nice life together. And one day, though, as they're making their rounds around the island and they come back to land, they find that they have a guest. And this guest in question is a member of the Guardsmen, who are in turn law enforcement officers who are specially armored and equipped to handle supervillains at this prison facility called the Vault. And the reason that this particular Guardsman is on the island is because there's a villain by the name of Tiger Shark who has ties to both Stingray and Diane, because Tiger Shark, whose real name is Todd Arliss, is Diane Arliss's brother, and in turn is Walter's brother-in-law. And so Todd had been turned into Tiger Shark by a mad scientist, and this mad scientist had made him into sort of this human-shark hybrid. And he had recently been taken down by the West Coast branch of the Avengers, and he was being held at the Vault in this containment unit, this aquatic containment unit. But one day the guards went to check on him, and they found him floating around in the containment unit in a sort of comatose state. And they tried to revive him, but nothing worked. And so they figured that, maybe if Walter, aka Stingray, who has some experience with ocean life, as well as, say, man and aquatic life hybrids, due to his experiences with the Avengers, they figured that he might be able to do some research on Todd, aka Tiger Shark, and try and figure out what's wrong with him. And so, of course, his Walter's wife Diane, I mean, she's saying, that's my brother. We'll do whatever we can to help him. And Walter, while he's very well aware of how dangerous tiger shark is. I mean, he's thinking to himself that he basically owes it to Todd to try and help him, because without having met tiger shark or Todd, he wouldn't have met his wife. And so they agreed to try and help Todd, or at least find out what's wrong with him, so that way they can help the guardsmen, and the guardsmen in turn can then take him back to the vault, albeit in a safe manner. And so they bring tiger shark in to the research facility, and so Walter and Diane are trying to do everything they can, as far as with the technology they have at their disposal, but they can't find anything wrong with him other than the fact that he's comatose, and he's in turn floating in a containment unit that the guardsmen had brought with them. And the guardsman that was left at the facility with them is just kind of looking on and trying to figure out what's going on along with them. And so Walter decides to go take a coffee break real quick, but once he's away, there's this big commotion that he hears, and he goes back, tries to run back to the chamber where the noise was coming from, and he finds that the door's locked, and he sees that there's water coming from under it. And so he puts the Stingray suit on, which in turn gives him enhanced strength as well as increased maneuverability underwater, and a certain amount of energy that he can use for weaponized blasts of energy from his hands. But the thing is, the Stingray suit is mainly designed to be an aquatic exploring suit as opposed to a combat suit. But it does help in this scenario in the sense that it increases his strength. And so since the door, it can't be opened from the other side for some reason, for whatever's going on behind the door, he can't open it because of damage from the other side. He uses his armor's enhanced strength capabilities to basically break the door open, and he finds a horrifying scene. He finds the containment unit shattered from within, and he finds tiger shark holding his wife hostage, with his clawed hand on her throat and threatening to kill her, and the guardsman is incapacitated on the ground. And so Walter, he's trying to reason with tiger shark and say, hey, look, if you want to leave, we won't stand in your way, just please let my wife go. And Diane's trying to get through to him as well, saying that you're my brother, please don't do this. And so tiger shark is saying, no, Todd is dead, there is no Todd, there's only tiger shark, that mad scientist who made me into this made sure of that, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And so basically he's reveling on the new sense of power that his transformed state has given him, and to the point where even though Diane's his sister, he only sees her as meat. And so it's right about then that the guardsman comes to and tries to ambush the tiger shark. And in the process, this gives Stingray a chance to see to his wife. But before he's able to get her out of harm's way, tiger shark overpowers the guardsman and in turn Stingray. Because Stingray, while his suit does give him something in the way of combat capabilities, Walter himself is not a fighter, and so he basically gets wiped out. And once he comes to, he sees that not only is the guardsman grievously injured by tiger shark, but tiger shark has absconded with his wife, and so he's put in a bit of a predicament, because if he immediately goes after tiger shark and Diane, that leaves the guardsman bleeding out and possibly dying. But on the other hand, if he stops to try and help the guardsman, that gives tiger shark a head start with his wife Diane. And so Walter, the only thing he can do is grab the guardsman and take him to this portable life support system that they have on the research facility. And he sets up a signal so that the Coast Guard will know to check out the island, the research facility that Walter and Diane work at. So that way they know that, hey, there's something wrong here, and hopefully they find the guardsman. And so, after having seen to the guardsman, Walter in his Stingray suit, goes underwater, to try and, pick up the trail of Tiger Shark. And so eventually, he sort of remembers where the transformation that Todd was put through took place. And it was this underground cavern that happened to be relatively nearby the research facility. And so he, on a hunch, he heads over there, and in the process tangles with a giant squid and is able to make short work of the said giant squid and drive it away. But then, he finds the cavern, and as he notes to himself, some of Diane's aquatic gear was in front of the cave. So that's when he knows they're definitely there. Because also that's the only place he could think of where, if they need to get resupplied as far as air, that's the only place they could go where Diane could, refill her oxygen tanks. And sure enough, he's right. And so he comes upon Tiger Shark and Diane, and once again, Diane's trying to reason with him and get through to his human side, and he keeps denying that that there's any sort of humanity left in him, and he's about to prove it by just slashing her throat. But it's right around then where Stingray makes his presence known, and he and Tiger Shark get into a fight, and in the process, because they're in something of an aquatic element, Stingray is able to put up a better fight than the fight he put up before, but he's still thoroughly outclassed by Tiger Shark in terms of strength and raw brutality. And once again, his suit was made primarily for aquatic exploration, with combat being a secondary consideration. And so he puts up a better fight than before, but he still gets the floor wiped with him and himself. And so in the process, there's a lot of damage to the cavern, to the point where the part of the cave where Diane was, there's a tunnel collapse, and so she's cut off from both Walter and Tiger Shark. And so at that point, Walter tries to use his energy blasts to get through the rubble, but unfortunately he's used up so much of the suit's energy trying to fight Tiger Shark with physical strength, and also to navigate through the water, that the energy blasts, there's not enough juice for them. And so he's begging Tiger Shark to help him, because while the suit gives him some enhanced strength, he knows that by himself he can't get through there in time. And so Tiger Shark basically just laughs it all off, and says that he's on his own, and basically that was like the last tie with his humanity that he had. It was his sister, and he was going to kill her, but the cave-in more likely did the job. And so that's where he takes his leave and leaves Stingray to vainly try to get through the rubble to his wife. And so Stingray, he does everything he can with the suit's enhanced strength, but unfortunately though, there's just too much rubble to get through, and it gets to the point where his gloves start to get torn up, and he's worked down to the fingers, and the fingers are just raw and bleeding, and he knows that he's not going to be able to get through her to his wife in time. And right about at that point where he's about to give in to despair, that's when Tiger Shark comes back and starts to help him get the rubble out of the way, all the rocks and stuff. And so at that point Stingray is elated, but at the same time he's like, why did you come back? And so Tiger Shark just looks at him and says, don't ask any stupid questions that'll make me change my mind. Just let's get all this out of here. Let's get to Diane. And so the two of them work together to get through the rubble, and with the two of them working together, they're able to do so. And they come upon Diane, who is unconscious, and but she's still alive, but they need to get her to the surface, in order to properly check her out and everything. And so in the process of getting to Diane, though, there's an alert that goes off, because during the scuffle between Tiger Shark and Stingray, some of the rubble had fallen onto a self-destruct mechanism on the mad scientist's lair, or within the mad scientist's lair. And once that happens, they have no choice but to try and find an exit out of there. And so as they're going down the tunnel that they were going to try and escape through, there's another collapse, and the ceiling's coming down on them. And so Stingray, he has just enough power in his suit, to try and swim through the water, but he doesn't have enough power to try and hold up the ceiling, without leaving Diane helpless, and which at this point she's still unconscious. And so Tiger Shark, that's when he steps in and holds the ceiling up to keep it, to try and delay its collapse. And he's telling Stingray to get Diane out of there. And he's like, but what about you? As in, Walter's asking Tiger Shark, what about you? How are you going to get out of there? He says, hey, don't worry about me. I don't got a death wish. I'll be right behind you. And he's sort of laughing and baring his teeth at the same time when he says this. And so Walter, he grabs Diane and runs as fast as he can and heads back into the water and out of the cavern. But unfortunately, though, the ceiling just not only collapses on Tiger Shark as far as Walter can see, but the facility explodes underwater, and he doesn't see Tiger Shark come out of the rubble. And so it's around this point that Diane, who Walter was able to get some breathing gear back on for her, she comes to, and she's asking what happened, and he has to give her the sad news that Tiger Shark's dead. But before he died, he came back and helped me get you out of there. I couldn't have done it without him. And he held up the ceiling to give us time to get out of there. Tiger Shark saved your life. Or Tiger Shark helped save your life. And that's when Diane sort of just looks at him sadly and says, no, you're wrong. It wasn't Tiger Shark that came back for me. It was my brother Todd. And that's how his story ends. And so I kind of like this story. I mean, it's interesting because in terms of art style, this was, say, something that you'd expect from, say, the late 80s to early 90s. But in terms of writing, though, it feels like it's something from the 70s. And that's probably because the writer for the story, the late Len Wein, or Wayne, it's W-E-I-N, he was the co-creator of Swamp Thing. He did a lot of comic work in the 70s, and that was probably arguably when he was most prevalent. And so I guess maybe there was some of that old school storytelling vibe when it comes to the writing, because sometimes there are blurbs of exposition that sometimes you think would make more sense if they were like thought balloons or something like that. But the fact they're speech bubbles, it's one of those things where on one hand it does help with exposition, because I didn't really know Stingray's story until I read this particular series of chapters within Marvel Comics Presents here, because on one hand Len Wein does a good job of catching the reader up on what's been going on with Stingray and Diane and what their life's like, but also their connection with Tiger Shark. And so even if you've never heard of the character Stingray before, or the character Tiger Shark, or you don't know who Diane is, by the time you finish the story, you have a good understanding of who they are as characters. But At the same time, I felt like some of the choices in exposition, while they gave us a lot of information, I feel like would have been better conveyed had they been thoughts as opposed to, say, verbalized words, as shown when, the characters are talking in such a way that, yes, it conveys a lot of information, but it's not how, say, a quote-unquote real person would talk, if that makes sense. So there was a little bit of awkwardness in that regard, but, I mean, the actual story, I thought, it wasn't a bad story. I thought it did a good job of, telling you who the main characters were and everything, and, you definitely came away with an understanding of who Stingray was, and, his, relationship with his wife, and also, their relationship with, Todd, aka Tiger Shark. So, and also liked the artwork by Jim Fern. It's very good artwork in terms of, say, showing what it's like underwater, and also, say, when the scenery is set up at the research facility where Walter and Diane work at and what have you. And it kind of made me think of M.D. Bright's artwork in a sense that it's oftentimes sort of, ordinary and mundane looking, but in a way that shows that how something might actually look, as opposed to, say, looking outlandish. But the only thing I could think of as far as artwork that I didn't like was the way Tiger Shark was depicted. I mean, like, it's not bad artwork, but the way his costume looks, this kind of goes back to, the feeling of, picking up on a 70s old school vibe in terms of the narration. Because if you look at the uniform of Tiger Shark, I mean, it looks like something you'd see from the 70s, if that makes sense. So when you have, like, the character Stingray, I mean, he actually looks pretty good. Here he is on the back cover of issue 53 here. I mean, he actually looks pretty good. The suit, I mean, it can go, regardless of what decade it's from, I mean, it still looks good. Excuse me. But on the other hand, though, let's see. Like in this picture right here, that's kind of what he looks like right there. Here we are. There he is on the back of 54. So, I mean, it's not like a bad uniform, but it looks out of place in the 90s, if that makes sense. So it kind of gives the story kind of a dated feel, in my opinion, like as far as the writing technique and the appearance of Tiger Shark. They sort of, like, the story's set in 1990, obviously, but at the same time, it doesn't, it looks like it's from the 90s in a lot of ways, but it feels like it's from, like, the 70s or something. So it kind of gives the story a bit of an awkward feel as to, the vibe and when it's supposed to take place and what have you. And also, one thing that that had me thinking was, okay, if the Vault knows how dangerous Tiger Shark is, why would they send just one guardsman, to, say, keep an eye on him while Walter and Diane are, working on him, trying to, see what's wrong with him. And I forgot to mention, apologies, but it turns out that, the whole thing about him being in a coma was because, Todd, or Tiger Shark, had, basically shut his, biological functions down, or slowed them down like a shark does, kind of like hibernation almost, and because he figured that if he faked an illness or faked his death or something like that, he figured on, the Vault, taking him to, say, or transferring him to another facility to try and find out what's wrong with him if, they exhausted all their measures, which, he knew that they would. And so that was part of his elaborate plan. It's just, a happy coincidence that of all the places that they took him to, it was at the research facility where his sister and brother-in-law were at. And so that kind of gave him an advantage in terms of being able to take Diane hostage. And so he didn't count on that part. So, and that was another thing I felt like, that was a bit of a one big coincidence in the story, as far as, like, his plan just happening to, coincide with being on the island with Diane and Walter, so there was a bit of that felt kind of like, well, why would you only send one guardsman to keep an eye on him when you know how dangerous he is? And yes, I mean, as shown in the story, like one of the guardsmen, just one guardsman is able to put up a little bit of a fight against a supervillain, but at the same time, you definitely want more than one guardsman when it comes to, say, transporting, a superpowered criminal, And also, I don't know, like, maybe there could have been something of an explanation as far as, had the creative team come up with a way to, say, have it to where Tiger Shark, planned, or maybe he somehow knew that one of the first places they would try to look for outside of the vault in terms of, say, transporting him or transferring him elsewhere, for help, would be the research facility where his sister and brother-in-law are at. Maybe there could have been some sort of prior agreement, or something with the government or something along those lines. I don't know if I make any sense as far as that goes, but just, the happy coincidence aspect of the story. Like, sometimes happy coincidences, can be a good thing in a story, but other times it can be like, really, that kind of thing. So it felt like that in that regard, for how he just happened to end up there of all places, that kind of thing. But I did like, getting to know Walter and Diane, because they seemed like, such a nice couple, and a nice, husband and wife duo, and some of their banter was, rather endearing. And I also appreciated how, they emphasized that Stingray was not a hero first. Like, he was an oceanographer first and a hero second. And so, while he was able to put up a bit of a fight against Tiger Shark, and depending on how well he fought against him, was like, he put up a better fight against him when he was in an aquatic environment, because that's how his suit's designed. So I liked how, he was able to put up a fight, but he was still thoroughly outclassed by, someone who is, say, a human and shark hybrid. So regardless of how well made Stingray's suit is, it's not going to hold up, say, to something that's, straight up biologically aquatic, as opposed to, say, artificially aquatic like a suit is. And so, and also, just that, the suit has limits as to what it can do. And so, the moment when, like, he tries to use his blasts, but he can't because, he used up a lot of the energy in his fight against Tiger Shark, as well as swimming underwater. I thought that added a nice touch of realism, and it kind of added some suspense to the story, in a sense that, this is someone who, unlike, say, someone like Iron Man, who a lot of writers would just have him, blast away at whatever the obstacle is, or what have you. I know there's been stories where Iron Man's had to contend with, shortages on his, power supply and what have you, but oftentimes, in the stories I've read, Iron Man's just able to, get through a situation like that with little or no problem, whereas this character Stingray, though, because of the limits of his suit, was really in trouble, not only for himself, but in terms of, say, there was a real possibility that he would not have been able to save his wife had Tiger Shark not changed his mind and come back to, try and save his sister, because, her reminding him of his humanity finally got through to him. And so that was another thing I liked about the story, is that, as corny as Tiger Shark looks, in my opinion, orange spandex, with a few exceptions, tends to not look so good on characters, at least to me. But I liked how, Tiger Shark, they showed him be, something of a threat that thoroughly outclassed the protagonist of the story, and also how he had sort of an animal-like cunning, that kind of thing that you'd expect from, say, a villain who's been around a bit. And I like that you had that interplay between him, Walter, and Diane, wherein it's like they're trying to remind him of his humanity, but he's in denial of it, and to the point where he's willing to kill his sister if they keep at him about it. But eventually, I mean, it does get through to him, and thankfully it results in him coming back to try and save his sister and work with his brother-in-law to do so. And so I thought it was interesting having a character who basically reveled in this newfound power that they've been given by way of, say, biological experimentation and transformation, but at the same time, they can't just outright deny that there's still a human side to themselves, and also that when someone that they care about or cared about back when they were still human is in danger, I mean, they can try and deny it, but at the end of the day, they can't to go through with it. I thought that was kind of a nice twist with Tiger Shark. And so obviously, I mean, I think this being a Marvel story, I mean, you can probably guess that Tiger Shark does show up again alive and well in some other book. And I'm not sure like when he first returned, but I do know that he survived this particular explosive cavern collapse, because he shows up in their stories long after the fact. But I did like, it was kind of a bittersweet ending in a sense that, I mean, you had Tiger Shark come back and do the right thing and help save his sister, but as far as Stingray and Diane are concerned, I mean, since they didn't see him make it out of the cavern before it exploded, they can only assume that he's dead. And I like that when Stingray was recounting to Diane how they got her out of there, and that they couldn't have done it without Tiger Shark, that she corrects him saying that it wasn't Tiger Shark that came back, it was my brother. And so that little reminder of humanity I really appreciated. And so yeah, I mean, all in all, I mean, not a bad story. I'm going to go ahead and give it 3 out of 5 stars. Family Matters, the Stingray story, it's a decent story. And it has good artwork. I just think that maybe the writing could have been improved in some spots. Because, I mean, it's not a bad story in and of itself. Like, the plot's not bad. I just think that, the way they communicate certain narrative information, to catch the reader up on what was going on, I think it would have been better conveyed had a lot of that been, say, in the form of thoughts as opposed to, say, straight up, dialogue, like verbal words, that kind of thing. But all in all, though, I mean, not a bad story, and it was a good spotlight story for a lesser-known character. And at least in my, at least to me, I kind of came away with a little bit more appreciation for the character Stingray. So I don't really know a whole lot about what happens to him after this story, or him and his wife, but I came to care about the characters in question, Walter, aka Stingray, and his wife Diane, because they were written as a nice loving couple. And I mean, not like sappy loving couple, but like believable, like this couple's been together for a long time, it's like they have a chemistry, that kind of thing. And so I definitely wanted things to turn out okay for them. And so the fact that Stingray was rendered somewhat helpless in the situation of trying to save his wife, I mean, that definitely gave the story a bit of a layer of suspense. And so it was a nice little twist of having Tiger Shark come back to save his sister after all, that kind of thing. So like I said, 3 out of 5 stars. So real quick, I'll show y'all some of the artwork here. First, the cover art. So this is the front cover of issue 53 of Marvel Comics Presents. And by the way, this is for the Wolverine story, The Wilding, which I've also reviewed. And also, turn it around. It's kind of like a wraparound cover, see? There's Comet Man, Black Widow, and Silver Sable. And I reviewed the story that they were in as well, and that was a good one. Also drawn by Rob Liefeld, not on the cover here, but on the interior art. Like, this is back when Liefeld was actually trying. So, and here's our star, Stingray. I thought that was a really cool picture. And I liked how the way, you know, the artist, let's see who it was. Fred Butler. I like the way Fred Butler drew Stingray here because, I mean, you look at it and it looks like, you know, a guy coming at you underwater. You got all the bubbles and stuff. But then you kind of pull it back a bit and you look right here where Stingray's hands are. They kind of look like eyes that you would see on a ray, you know, a stingray or a manta ray. And then, you know, say like right about here, it looks like there'd be a mouth there. And then you look at the legs and you kind of see, that's where in the trail of water, the bubble trail, it kind of makes it look like, you know, there's a stingray right there and there's its tail. So I thought that was a nice little touch there. So this cover was by Fred Butler. And then you got this really good looking cover. And you got Wolverine and Grey Hulk there. It was by Dave Ross and Joe Rubinstein. And then you turn it around. So Shroud, Werewolf by Night. I'll be covering that story next. And then right here, you got Stingray and Tiger Shark, you know, facing off with each other. So, and right here, you got the cover of issue 55. Once again, you got Wolverine and Grey Hulk facing off anew. There's Stingray right in the corner there, Marvel Comics. And turn it around. You got the Collective Man, Werewolf by Night, and you got Stingray. And let's see. The cover is by June Brigman and Roy Richardson. This is probably my favorite cover right here, but you got, once again, you got Wolverine and Grey Hulk. You got Speedball in the corner there. Then you turn it around. You got Werewolf by Night, Speedball, and here we go. The focus is mainly on Stingray and Diane. And I liked how this little detail here, you can kind of see, you know, it looks like, you know, you can kind of see Walter's face behind the mask there, you know, just in desperation, you know, trying to save his wife and everything. And this cover was by Steve Lytle, an excellent artist, so no wonder this cover is so good. But real quick though, I'll show you all some of the interior art. So I already showed you all the splash page here. Here we are. It's when they're being ambushed by a couple of sharks before the main part of the story starts. Here we are. Make it to the island, make it back home, and there's the guardsman meeting them. You got the little, you know, flashback, you know, catching the reader up on what went on with Tiger Shark. I thought Jim Fern did a pretty good job of, you know, capturing the intensity of the situation, because there he is, you know, just chilling, grabbing a cup of coffee, and then, you know, all the commotion, and, you know, he's helpless to get back in to, you know, find out what's going on, and it's only when he comes back with his Stingray suit on that he has a chance. So, and there he is, you know, using the suit's strength to make handholds into the door, and he's finally able to rip it off, and there's Tiger Shark holding his wife hostage. So, oh wait, this is from issue 55, but I really like this, you know, splash page right here. And there he is, you know, after finding, you know, Tiger Shark and Diane in the underground cavern. You know, pretty good detail on the fight here. And this is where Stingray puts up a better fight, but, you know, unfortunately he's still outclassed. So, and I love this, you know, panel right here, because this is where Stingray, after his power has been severely limited, I mean, he's trying to dig through all the rubble by hand, and it gets to the point where his gloves literally are torn apart, and it's down to the bare flesh of his fingers, like they're all bleeding and stuff. And then of course here's, you know, Tiger Shark coming back to help him. And here they are. And here he is, you know, getting back there to help, you know, try and save his sister. And I like this shot where he's just sort of, you know, laughing. You know, he's got this evil grin on his face saying, hey, I ain't got a death wish. So. And I thought this was like a nice, you know, way of conveying, you know, the facial expression of sadness, even though you can't see Diane's, you know, mouth. Like the eyes say it all, you know. So yeah, there you go. I mean, a decent story, had some good artwork. But yeah, thank you very much for taking the time to check out my review. You got any questions, comments, please drop a line, let me know. And if you like what you see here, please feel free to like and subscribe. So y'all have a good night. Take care. Bye.